Okay, so Be'ezer Hashem, it's great to be here to learn with the alumni again, Baruch Hashem. When Zev and I were discussing what to do with you tonight, so he encouraged me, even if it's a topic that many are familiar with, to do something that is familiar and inspirational for Chanuka. So I want to begin with a familiar topic, some here are familiar with, and maybe shed some new light, and I think the angles that it has in terms of machshava for Chanukah as well can be very, very inspirational. There is a famous discussion about what is the Gemara's requirement of Mahadrin and Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin. If you take a look on the third page of your handout, the Gemara tells us, Tana Rabbanan, in the first photocopy, the first entry, Mitzvahs ner Chanukah ner Yishubesa, v'ha-Mahadrin ner l'kol echad ve'echad, v'ha-Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin, be'shamay omer miyom rishon malik shmon mikan ve'elech boches ve'elech, u'be'sil omer miyom rishon malik achas mikan ve'elech posech v'holech. So, Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin corresponds to the nights. Mahadrin is ner l'kol echad ve'echad. Now, once we follow Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin, which is our custom, what is the requirement of Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin? So here we have a famous Rambam. The Rambam is found on the first page, which is quoted by the Brisker Rav. There is a beautiful Brisker Rav that I'd like to go through with you and see what are the beautiful implications that emerge from it. So the Rambam's lashon is kama neros hu madlik b'Chanukah mitzvah she'e kol bayis ubayis madlik ner echad. As the Gemara told us, v'amahader es ha-mitzvah, and those who are mahader mitzvah, madlik neros k'minyan anshe bayis ner l'kol echad ve'echad. And the mahadrim, they have the ner l'kol echad ve'echad. V'amahader yoser al zeh, and those who are mahader even more, v'osa mitzvah min ha-mufchar. It's interesting, the Rambam's lashon, osa mitzvah min ha-mufchar. Madlik ner l'kol echad ve'echad b'layla harishon. They use one candle on the first night. Umosa v'olach b'chol layla v'nayla ner echad keitzad. Harei shoyu anshe abayis asara b'leil harishon madlik asara neros. So the Rambam tells us.
Where? I'm sorry.
Perek Dalet halacha aleph.
Okay.
The Rambam says that if on the first night, so then you have 10 people, then in such an instance you have 10 candles on the first night. On the 8th night, then there'll be 80 candles. This is the Shitas Harambam. Well, one could be mefalpel. Here, there's some more handouts over here. One could be mefalpel whether it's the pashtus of the Gemara. The Gemara is quite vague. The Gemara says, Mahadrin is ner l'kol echad, ve'echad, min ha-Mahadrin. So it sounds like what Rav Adam wants to argue is...
it says for the Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin, Beshamai Omrim.
Yom Rishon.
It doesn't say Shmon
Okay, Yafeh, I hear. Well, Tosas agrees with you. The Bali Tosas hold that Mahadrin min ha-Mahadrin means that you have on each night a candle the amount of candles corresponding to the night. So that's the Shita of the Bali Tosas. And Rav Adam's pointing out a nice point that if the Gemara was calculating also the amount of people in the house, like the famous Rambam says, so then the Gemara wouldn't have simply said Yom Rishon Madlik Achas. That's a nice aura. Okay. The Rambam and the Bali Tosas, though, disagree. That the Rambam says, as we do, at least the numbers wise, is as what's commonly done, us Ashkenazim, and that is that you calculate both the Bnei Habayis as well as the night. However, what's unique in the Rambam, and this the Brisker Rav turned into a major discussion, is that the Rambam says that the Baal Habayis lights all of the candles. So 8 people in the house, the first night, the Baal Habayis lights all 8. Very different than our custom in Ashkenaz, where each one of the Baal Habayis, Bnei Habayis, lights a candle. So let's take a look at the Brisker Rav's analysis of why that's so. And this is well known. These are Dvar Matikim. That's not what I'm coming to be Mechadesh tonight, not the Brisker Rav's famous Chiddush. But what we're going to do is analyze some things. I said, okay, I'll do the same thing that people are familiar with because it's most conducive for the inspiration. But I realized as I went through it that there are nuances that I never saw before. So I was very excited, some things that came out in preparing this. And Be'ez Hashem, we're going to see that there are fascinating angles over here. Famously, this is the famous part. The Brisker Rav points out that this machlokes between the Rambam and the Ramah is another machlokes. So again, we have to have clear what's the machlokes between the Rambam and the Ramah. On the fourth night, according to the Rambam, if there are 10 people in the house, the Baal Bais lights 40 candles. According to the Ramah, you have the same amount of candles, but the difference is that each individual, each one of the 10 people, light 4 candles. They light 4 candles. What's the Yesod HaMachlokas? So the Brisker Rav famously connected this to another Machlokas. Take a look in the Ramaskal V'Asher Yira Lomar. V'Asher Yira Lomar B'Sod Plutasa. The Yesod, the essence of their Machlokas, revolves around another sheet of the Rambam. Dine B'Rambam Perak Beis Milchas Mila Halacha Daled Kasaf Hamol Kol Zman She'osik B'Mila Chozer Bein Al Tzitzin She'Ma'akvin Bein Al Tzitzin She'ein Ma'akvin Pirish Al Tzitzin HaMa'akvin Chozer Al Tzitzin She'ein Ma'akvin Eino Chozer. The Rambam's of the opinion that the Mila, which has 2 parts to it, the Mila has the part that's Ma'akev, the Orla that must be removed, and then there's another part of the Orla that the Gemara describes as a Hidur Mitzvah to remove. It's a very interesting type of Hidur Mitzvah, but at the end of the day, the Gemara describes it as a Hidur Mitzvah. The Rambam says that if you did the Mitzvah, but you forgot to do the Hidur Mitzvah, you don't go back. The Tur disagrees. Continuing on at the end of that line, Vatur Cholkin Azah, first word on the line is Ayin Zayin. Usfirulu dezeu rak b'mol b'Shabbos sham, hu dinemar adin din piresh havi haschila haschal b'fnei atzmo v'lo nitin l'Shabbos lahatchos b'shvil tzitz she'ein ma'akvin. Aval b'chol lo oilam chayzer afal tzitzin she'ein ma'akvin mishum hider mitzvah. Says the Tur that the halacha is that you do go back. What's that? And it's connected to the Esrog Chakira, correct. The Brisker Rav introduces a beautiful Chakira. He says, is Hidur Mitzvah something that could be fulfilled outside of the Maisa Mitzvah? In good English, it would be, could the Hidur Mitzvah be explicated from the Maisa Mitzvah? Can you separate the Hidur Mitzvah from the Maisa Mitzvah? The Rambam is of the opinion that if you already did the Mitzvah itself, so then in such an instance, you can't fulfill the Hidur Mitzvah. The Hidur Mitzvah cannot be separated, is not distinct from the Maisa Mitzvah. So therefore, once the Maisa Mitzvah has been completed, you lost your opportunity to fulfill the Hidur Mitzvah. While the Torah disagrees, and the Torah holds that when it comes to Hidur Mitzvah, even if you fulfill the Maisa Mitzvah, you still have the opportunity to go back to fulfill the Hidur Mitzvah. Oh, says the Brisker Rav. I'll explain shortly. Rav, I'm making a lot of good problems here. So, says the Brisker Rav, that's the machlokes over here between the Rambam and the Tur, also when it comes to Neiros Chanuka. The Rambam is of the opinion that when it comes to the mitzvah of Chanuka, the moment in which you fulfill the core mitzvah, which is how many candles? 1. That's really interesting. On the 8th night, according to Rambam, the Rambam's case, you have 64 times the Maisa Mitzvah. 64 times. Does that match up with other halachos in Shas? Doesn't seem to. We'll get to that shortly. That's a little foreshadowing. So, but the Rambam says the Baal Bais has to do the entire Hidur. Because if you fulfilled the Maisa Mitzvah, what was the formulation according to Rambam? The Hidur Mitzvah can't be explicated from the Maisa Mitzvah. However, the Torah holds no. He holds you could, even if the Maisa Mitzvah has been done, you could fulfill the Mitzvah independent. The Hidur Mitzvah can be done independently of the Maisa Mitzvah. Rav Adam made reference to the famous story with Reb Chaim that he called in his Talmidim one Sukkos, and he had two esrogim. He said, this esrog is very nice. It's a beautiful esrog. He showed the Talmidim. He said, but I believe it's a Safek Murkov. Murkov means grafted. He's not sure if it's kosher. In this esrog, he showed the Talmidim, it's okay. He said, but I know it's Vadai kosher. It's not Murkov. So he said, which one should I make the bracha on? Which one should I take first? So Talmidim said, Rabbi, we think that you should take the one that's Vadai kosher and then take the other one. So Reb Chaim disagreed with him. Reb Chaim said, no, I should take the one, obviously without being mafsik between the netila of one and the netila of the other. But he said, if I already took the one that's kosher, then I was Vadai Yotzei the mitzvah. And then there's no significance to Hiddur, because Hiddur can't be explicated from the Maisa Mitzvah. So therefore, Reb Chaim felt that you should take the one that's Mehudar, and afterwards take the one that was Vadai kosher. If he didn't have a choice to take both, for sure Reb Chaim would have taken the one that's Vadai. If he only had one of them to buy in the store, he would have bought the one that's Vadai kosher. That's Pasha. The only question is, which ones comes first? So Brisker Rav was using his father's famous Chakira, which was actually referred to in much more difficult terms by his grandfather, by the Beis Halevi. His father refined it, and that is this famous shtickle from the Brisker Rav. These are Dvarim Atikim, these are Dvarim Yeduim. This was the part that I was a little concerned that I told Rav Zev, but at the end of the day, this is something everybody knows. But looking back at the sugya, I realized that there's beautiful nuances that I always missed in this famous explanation of the Brisker Rav. Ad kan, is everything clear? No jewel be left behind. Anything that needs to be clarified? Good? Okay, beautiful.
Is there an alchemy including the idea of Pesume Nisa?
Pesume Nisa is an important nafkamina, but I don't think it's going to be relevant over here. But I'm willing to hear after the Shiur what you have to say about how it might be connected.
Why is this chiluk how do we draw this chiluk out of the fact that we see the Rambam holds that the Balabais lights for everyone? Meaning you could still say the same chiluk and say that each person has an individual chiyuv in the house to light, and each person just has to have no hetzig between lighting their first candle and the rest of
the Brisker Rav's assumption is the moment in which the Balabais stops lighting is the moment in which the mitzvah, the core mitzvah, has been completed.
So then
that's by definition going to be a hefsek.
One candle for the whole house.
That's right. One candle for the whole house, and then by definition is going to. Okay. So this is the famous piece, and what I just said, the Brisker Rav elaborates on. Now, what I think is critical in the last two paragraphs of the Brisker Rav, in Dibra Maskal Vihine and the Dibra Maskal Vihine on the next page, is that Brisker Rav adds a couple of points that the world always glosses over, which I think the Brisker Rav knows. Michal mentioned to me that a big Talmud Chacham who wrote Rav Soloveitchik Shiurim likes to disagree with this famous Brisker Rav. I believe the Brisker Rav, in reading it again, was responding to almost all of the dissenting views. He was aware of, I don't know what the Talmud Chacham exactly said, but I think I can anticipate. He was aware of these dissenting views, and we're going to see that those dissenting views are beautiful opinions as well, but the Brisker Rav for some reason disagreed with that. Take a look at Dibra Maskal Vihine Gam L'das Harama. Vihine Gam L'das Harama, page 28. The Perusha Dener L'Kol Echad Ve'echad. Give please Pinchas a copy. Vihine Gam L'das Harama. The Perush Dener L'Kol Echad Ve'echad Hu Shekol Echad Ve'echad Madlik Bifnei Atzmo. Mikol Makom HaVadai Pshita. The ein shum nafkusa klal imhu ba'atzmoy oisa ma'isa alaka o acher mamlik avuro. Says the Brisker Rav, just in the middle, he throws in this idea. He says, of course, he says when it comes to Neros Chanuka, there's no chiyuv for you to light. You don't have to light. As long as a candle has been lit that corresponds to your rank in the house, so then in such a case, then the core chiyuv has been fulfilled, even according to the Ramah. The gam ikar ner Chanukah the issue base yochel lahadlik mishi v'av she'enu mebnei habayis rak she'yeh bar chiyuva. I always glossed over these words of the Brisker Rav. I'll tell you what I think the Brisker Rav is doing. The Brisker Rav is challenging the following understanding of the Rambam. I love the Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes points out in his Chidushim on Shas that when it comes to Mahadrin of Ner Chanukah, as you could see from the Gemara on the third page, it's really strange. The Gemara starts off, Hachiyu of Ner Chanukah is Ner Shabesa. Mahadrin, Ner L'Kol Echad V'Echad. Mahadrin, Min HaMahadrin, Rabbosai, could you find me a place in an area in Halacha where the Gemara starts off right away telling you the Mahadrin, Min HaMahadrin? No place in Shas. There is a famous Gemara about Hiddur Mitzvah. That is in entry number 3, where the Gemara in Shabbos on Kuf Lamed Gimel on the Beis tells us, Zeh Keli V'Anveyu, Hisnoya L'Fana Mitzvahs, make the mitzvahs beautiful. Sukkah no, Lulav no, Shofar no, Tzitzis no, Sefer Torah no. Interestingly, no mention of Neros Chanukah. All of these things that we're referring to are what my Rebbe, who should have a refuah shalom, or Rav Ramshpil, used to point out. All of these are examples of Hiddur Mitzvah in the Chaftza Shel Mitzvah, in the object of the Mitzvah. The Gemara makes no mention here of Ner Chanukah. Striking. But more than that, Sfas Emes points out that there is no area in Halacha where you make a bracha on a Hiddur Mitzvah. There's no area in Halacha where Yotzei the Maisa Mitzvah and you make a separate bracha on the Hiddur Mitzvah.
Even hey, I'm not making
What about here?
it.
Comes along Rabbi Kiva Eger in the Chuvas. Rabbi Kiva Eger, Madura Tinyana, Simin Yud Gimel, and he says a chidush. Now, normally, Rabbi Kiva, we're learning Basa B'chal Taruvas. Rabbi Kiva Eger says something, the whole world shakes. There's one halacha where Rabbi Kiva Eger says something, and the world ignores Rabbi Kiva Eger. Ignores him. Ignores him. So the Fair Tshuva, look it up. No one here follows it. I challenge you. Maybe there is. Maybe there's. I doubt that you'll start new chumrah. Go back to the Kail. Go back to the Kail and say like this. Where do you find the person makes a bracha in the mitzvah? So your father gets up. He makes a bracha on Neros Chanukah. He was yotze already with the first candle. Never Shabbat Kor Chiyuv. It's your turn to go up. You make a bracha lahadlik ner. You Ashkenazim. Sfardim. We have to talk about lahadlik ner shel Chanukah v'chulei v'chulei. You yotze the mitzvah already. Zok des Sfas Emes. You have to say that when it comes to Neros Sfas Emes, you have to say that when it comes to Neros Chanukah, a special takana was made that you make a bracha on the Hiddur Mitzvah. And he makes reference to Rabbi Kiva Eger. Rabbi Kiva Eger gets stuck. Rabbi Kiva Eger says, you have to have in mind, not to be yotze with the Baal Bayis. Can you imagine? You know, the 15-year-old kid in Modern Orthodox High School goes over to his father, and he says beforehand, comes back, no, better. Shana Aleph Nativ boy comes back, and he says, Dad, I'm not having a mind to be yotze with you. Comes back for 2 days for Chanukah. He left yeshiva for 2 days. Chanukah, his trip to America. We have that now. Boys will leave for 2 days. So he goes back. He goes home. Dad, I learned in yeshiva. That's what Rabbi Kiva Eger says. Rabbi Kiva Eger has no other solution. Says the Sfas Emes bedoirois. This wasn't the minhag even before Streimluch existed. We've been lighting Neros Chanukah, and says the Sfas Emes, you have to say that the takana of Ner Chanukah was, that's what he's mechadesh, that the takana of Ner Chanukah was to make a bracha on the Hiddur Mitzvah. L'niyaz daiti, the Brisker Rav is coming to be mafki on this. The Brisker Rav is coming when he says V'hine gam l'das harama, is that the Brisker Rav is coming to say no. There isn't a chiyuv that's on every individual, and therefore you make a bracha on the Mahadrin. It's not a chiyuv of the Maisa. Continue on in the words of Brisker Rav, where he says, Ulam ikar nafkusa shebein shitas v'arambam idil das harambam kulan eres chod adlokininu. Udras harambam Mahadrin kol echad ve'echad madlik b'fnei atzon eres misuyamim. Skip a line. Aval gam l'das harama tuchal adlok azul le'yosei sayidei ish echad l'kol b'nei abayis l'kol echad ve'echad d'lab b'maisa adlok atal yimilsa v'rak ba'neiros. It's totally on the neiros. The Brisker Rav claims that this halacha is a halacha that's not unique to the maisa adlaka, but rather is just a question of how you quantify and qualify the chiyuv, and the way in which you quantify and qualify the chiyuv is ner l'kol echad ve'echad, and eino chanami etzem ha'maisa adlaka tu chaliyos. I never understood what the Brisker Rav was doing. Now, before I go on, let me just crunch, and then I'll get back. I'm less interested in being medayik in every word the Brisker Rav. This is not morning seder right now. No.
Yeah,
I'm not being mafkir from what you say. I want to develop the core points over here well. We now have two different ways. We're going to develop a few different ways of understanding the nature of Mahadrin. One way of understanding the nature of Mahadrin is, as the Brisker Rav is developing, a machlokus between the Rambam and the Ramah. That's a general chakira in how you look at Hidur Mitzvah. Do you say Hidur Mitzvah could be explicated from the Maisa Mitzvah or not? That's the machlokus between the Rambam and the Ramah. I'd like to introduce that based on the Sfas Emes, which the Brisker Rav was trying to be mafkia from. Now, how do you decide who's right in the Ramah? We'll discuss that shortly. What he was trying to be mafkia from was a sheet of the Sfas Emes that says that there was a special takana that was made, that we make a bracha on the Hidur Mitzvah. And let me share with you, again, repeating a couple nafkaminas and adding a couple as well. Nafkamina number one is Rabbi Kiva Eger. And I want to tell you that the Minig Yisrael is not like Rabbi Kiva Eger. Someone wants to be Mahadar, no pun intended, maybe there's room for it. But at the end of the day, the Minig Yisrael is not that way. Secondly, there's a famous discussion that exists to this day, and this is one of the collector's items. The Shana Bet boys this year had a hard time swallowing this. That Chacham Avadia Zatzal, who was never scared to have an honest, independent opinion, Chacham Avadia changed his mind in his 80s, but Chacham Avadia always thought that Sephardic Bachurim, who are living away from home and in yeshivas, really there isn't any chiyuv for them altogether to light Neros Chanuka, because the chiyuv is the chiyuv on the Baal Habayis in their home. Chacham Avadia went so far as to say, even if in our situation in Netiv Aryeh, you have a boy who's in Yerushalayim at 7 o'clock at night, and in America it's 11, 12, so then he said, even though the father yet hasn't lit, at the end of the day the father will light tonight, and he doesn't have a chiyuv. Interestingly, I said this over to the Sephardic boys, and then they told me that Rav Dermoni Shlita and Tzadok Shlita said that Chacham Avadia later changed his mind. And Chacham Avadia in Chazon Avadia did change his mind. I knew it from the Yalkut Yosef. Truth is, the first Shita of Chacham Avadia I find even more understandable than being Choser, because at the end of the day, there's no independent chiyuv. There's a chiyuv only on the Baal Habayis, and the Shulchan Aruch writes that the only one that lights is the father. It's the father. But there isn't going to be any independent. Just contrast the extremes. You have the Sfas Emes, where you have a chiyuv on each one of the Bnei Habayis. The pashtus of the mechaber is the Baal Habayis has the chiyuv. If you're not the Baal Habayis, then you have no chiyuv altogether. That's the other extreme.
That's what.
What's that?
You're I know. But
That's that's right. And
You
then
used to have a Sephardi Bacher always like the one in the
there you go. That's what I thought, and that's what I even saw Yalkut Yosef. I read it for them, and then they showed me that the Chazon Avadia, Chacham Avadia Zatzal, toward the end of his life changed his mind.
Even for local or just for America?
I don't know. I didn't look up Chazon Avada, so I don't know. It's a nice question. Another nafkamina between the way the Sfas Emes said it and others is going to be the following Shiur. What happens if a person gets confused? He thinks it's the fourth night, and it's really the fifth night. Or, what happens if a person doesn't have enough candles, and then he gets enough candles? But in both of those cases, he lit before with the bracha. Zok the Magen Avram, a wild chiddush. Taf Reish Nun Aleph Sivkat and Chafei. The Magen Avram says that the halacha is he makes a new bracha. A new bracha.
He lights all over again? Or he
No, those candles are missing. Oh, what happens if those candles went out already? We're going to get there if Rav Zev gives us enough time. It's okay if you'll instead of Malav Malka, you have Torah instead of Malav Malka. So
the first bagel store didn't have the bagels yet, so let's go
okay,
get.
so
we
now
got
we have a lot of time. Okay,
That's why he's not here. He went to
Zok the
right here.
Magen Avram.
He went to another
Avram
place.
says that the halacha is that you make a new bracha. Hayitachein. So according to the Brisker Rav, this makes no sense whatsoever. According to the Sfas Emes, there's room to say that what's the pshat? The pshat is that Chazal were misakein a bracha, and it's the answer to a trivia question. The only time you'll find that you make a bracha on a hiddur mitzvah. The answer to a trivia question.
So,
By the way, one thing that we need to cheshbon would be what is actually the Ramah's reason? Why does Ramah say that each one of the Bnei Abayim slant? So at home, I have some Shulchan Aruch, my tours. Some of the tours are printed with the Darkei Moshe and Darkei Moshe Aruch in the back. It happens to be in Aruch Chaim. I don't have the Darkei Moshe Aruch in the back. So I was going to ask Rav Daniel if I could sneak a look at his Darkei Moshe Aruch. But the Darkei Moshe writes that Tosas's objection of lighting 64 candles is because it's not going to be obvious what is the Mahadran and what is the Mahadran Min Mahadran. If you go in, you see 64 candles, so then how do you know? So the Ramah writes, it's not a problem today, because each one of the Bnei Abayis lights in a different place. So it's unclear. What's the Ramah saying? Is he saying something closer to Brisker Rav's Havana? Or is he saying something closer to Sfas Emes' Havana? That's a tzarchim. That I don't have a full yishuv. I need to look at the Darkei Moshe Aruch. But at the end of the day, that's just Lahagdil Torah Ladira that you could put in brackets. But to crunch, what do we have so far? To crunch, we have Machlokes Rambam and Ravid. Whether Rambam and Ramah, we have Machlokes Rambam and Ramah. Whether you could have a lighting of Hiddur Mitzvah outside of the Ma'aseh Mitzvah, and then we have the Brisker Rav's Hezber with a diuk that we were mendaking what the Brisker Rav was doing. Where the Brisker Rav says that they're arguing about whether the Hiddur could be explicated from the Ma'aseh Mitzvah. Or you could say what the Sfas Emes says, which the Brisker Rav I think was coming to say is wrong, and that is to say that no, that there's a separate chiyuv on each one of the Bnei Abayis, and that's our answer to our Sephardic brethren. Our answer is that no, the halacha is that you make a bracha on the Hiddur Mitzvah, and that's going to be the shita of the Ramah. Kach tiknu Chazal. This is the actual takana. It's a long Sfas Emes. It's not an easy Sfas Emes to read. The Brisker Rav is easier to read than the Sfas Emes in this case. But at the end of the day, that's what comes out according to the Sfas Emes, and then that stands in contrast that we had mentioned to the custom for Svardim, where the pashtus is that only the Bnei Abayis are away, they wouldn't light, and the nafkamina being if you get a new candle or you forgot. There's those who go so far as to say that you would make a separate bracha on the Hiddur Mitzvah, and that works beautifully with the Sfas Emes' approach. And Rabbi Akiva Eiger is going with the pashtus. Rabbi Akiva Eiger is bothered. He doesn't agree with the Sfas Emes. Rabbi Akiva Eiger says you can't make bracha on the Hiddur Mitzvah. And we pointed out, Rabbi Akiva Eiger doesn't say it this way, as far as I recall. But at the end of the day, it's really schwer. It is difficult how it is that when it comes to Ner Chanukah, we have a separate bracha on the Hiddur Mitzvah. Now, before we go, one more thing before Rav Adam's Ha'ara. If you take a look at the next paragraph that begins in the Brisker Rav, he says, "V'hine yayun sham od bebeis halevi." He quotes his grandfather, "Shechokar b'taimo demotzinu b'mitzvah zu, shel ner Chanuka dinim lemahadrin lemahadrin min hamahadrin. He makes a reference to the Zayd of the Beis Halevi. I never understood what he was doing in this line. And then I looked it up, and I said, oh, it's that Beis Halevi. There's a very famous Beis Halevi. And that's what the Brisker Rav is making reference to. And he's now going to explain why he disagrees with his grandfather. The Beis Halevi gives us the machshava, the inspiration behind what the Sfas Emes was saying. And the Beis Halevi asks the textual question that we mentioned in the Gemara. And that is, you don't find, when it comes to Hidur Mitzvah, that right off the bat, you give us the Mahadrin, you give us the Mahadrin, Min Mahadrin, where does this come from? Says the Beis Halevi, a beautiful inspirational vart. The Beis Halevi says, because the whole miracle came about due to Hidur Mitzvah. He says, really, the Chashmonaim could have taken oil and diluted it. And the Pach Hashem would have lasted 8 days. They could have thinned out the wicks.
Could have used Tamei oil.
They could have even used possibly Tamei oil, Tamotra B'tzibur. But, says the Beis Halevi, there was something that was propelling, and he doesn't explain what. There was something that was propelling the Chashmonaim for a uncompromised fulfillment of the mitzvah. The first time this Beis Halevi was something that I shared with others was when I was an assistant rabbi on the Upper West Side. Dylan remembers that place. And we'll remind you, don't worry. So there are many things you can learn from the Baalei Tshuva on the Upper West Side. And there was a woman who I spoke about this Beis Halevi, and she crunched it so beautifully. This was basic Judaism. I was giving a basic Judaism class, National Jewish Outreach Program. And the woman said, if you compromise, then the miracles won't happen. That was her lashon. If you compromise, then the miracles don't happen. The Dvarim Amukim. The Chashmonaim felt at that moment was not a time to rely on Tumah Hutra B'tzibur. It was not a time to rely on thinning out the wicks. Why? So that the Beis Halevi doesn't explain. But there's a well-known Bach. The Bach says, why is it that when it comes to Purim, the way in which we celebrate Purim is in a fashion of Seudas Purim. Yeah, when it comes to Chanuka, the Pasha says there is no Seuda. Says the Bach, that's because when it came to Purim, our bodies were in jeopardy. We were Isakonas Haguf. When it came to Chanuka, there was a Sakonas Hanefesh. And the Bach then goes on to explain, why were we in a state of Sakonas Hanefesh? Shenisrashlu Yisrael Bavodasam. Bnei Yisrael become lazy in their avodah. So the Chashmonaim felt that this was a time that we needed to make a stand that avodah has to be done bihidura. And therefore the only way that the avodah was going to return l'migdasho, the only way it was going to return is if they weren't going to compromise. Because chas v'chalila, if they were, so then it could very well be that the Klal Yisrael would forget the entire musag of Tumah v'Tahara. They would forget the essence of the way in which the avodah was done in the Mikdash. One needs a lot of chachma and siyata d'shmaya to know when is the time that you take a hard line, when is the time you take a softer line. That requires a lot of siyata d'shmaya. But at the end of the day, the Chashmonaim were one. The proof in the pudding this Baalei Machshava speak about is when the nace happens. The nace brings out the idea that their stance was correct.
It's manyan because they did take a step back. I mean, they did compromise on the chitaynis.
That's another shir ein chanami. Right, that I said in 10-minute Musar. It's fascinating. Rav Nementzal Shlita points out that the Gemara Menachos and Nachaf Ches on the base says that the Chashmonaim used a wooden menorah. And that they compromised. That might maybe it'll connect a little bit to the end of the Shiur. So the Brisker Rav here is alluding to the fact that his grandfather explained, I think the Omek Advarim is, that Ner Chanuka Mahadrin is entirely different. So actually his grandfather's pshat supports the Beis Halevi's pshat supports the approach of the Sfas Emes, that Hidur Mitzvah is unique when it comes to Ner Chanuka. And what did the Brisker Rav just develop? The Brisker Rav just developed that the same rules of Hidur Mitzvah apply to Mila, that they're all part of the same construct. That's his reference in this line. V'hine, take a look that my grandfather was choker in the Tam, but he doesn't tell us what the Tam is. And then he says, Ulechora yesh lomar. I think that the pshat, and he doesn't say different because he's never going to say that he's disagreeing with the Zayd of the Beis Halevi. But Ulechora yesh lomar, the Pashtus the Beis Halevi says, the Brisker Rav says is a different pshat. And we're about to see what that is. And it's a little bit technical. I think the first 10 times or 30 times that I learned this Brisker Rav, I never realized this nuance of what he's doing over here. Rav Adam, I didn't take your question.
Just a technical question. In a Brisker household, all the Bnei Bayis light and only the Baal Bayis makes a bracha?
No, they go with the Rama.
But I'm saying the way the Brisker Rav touches up the Rama is that not everyone...
No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, he's saying that they were masaking the bracha on the Cheftza Shel Ner. That's what he's saying. It's a Brisker Hagdara. I agree. It's a Brisker Hagdara within the Rama. Okay.
Who established? Were the Chashmonaim the ones who established lighting Neros Hanukkah every year?
So, do you have a Rambam? The Rambam's lashon is quite interesting. If you have but I don't want to say anything without. Or maybe we'll continue with the Rambam later. Okay. To answer your question, we have to look carefully in lashon Rambam. There is something interesting about that in lashon Rambam. But let's continue on now. Where we're going. Why did I disagree with my grandfather? Says the Brisker Rav. L'chora yesh lomar, dihine be'emes harei matzinu gam b'shar mitzvahs dinim shel mitzvah min hamufchar. He says, I'm right. This concept of Zeh Keli V'Anveyu is a concept that exists in Kol HaTorah Kula. K'mod ashkam b'mila b'tzitzin shenim ma'akvin v'achenami b'lulav din lo k'aldo kosher u'mikol makom mitzvah min hamufchar bo yeged. Thank you. K'mavur b'sukkah daf lamed gimel. So the Brisker Rav says that this is the concept of Hidur Mitzvah that we have in Kol HaTorah Kula. In other words, he's saying it's not like the Beis Halevi had said that it's something unique. It's something that is found in Kol HaTorah Kula. But there's an obvious question. And he goes on to ask him on himself. And that is that the Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Tesam Beis says, Hidur Mitzvah ad shlish. What does Hidur Mitzvah ad shlish mean? So there's a discussion, the Gemara, milagavu, milavar, which is a question of detail, but at the end of the day, the requirement of Hidur Mitzvah ad shlish says that you only expend a third of the mitzvah itself. And over here, we have 64 times the mitzvah. But the Brisker Rav points out, it's a Beferish Rabbeinu Chananel. He says it's a Beferish Rabbeinu Chananel. There are two Rabbeinu Chananos. If you pick up in the last column, page 28, he points out, Vilamadati. First word on the line is Ika. Vilamadati zeh midivrei Rabbeinu Chananel. The first word on the line is Rabbeinu Chananel. B'Shabbos. Shekasav, on the Gemara of Ner Chanukah, Pirish ha-mahadrin, mahadrin mitzvos, kidamrina lihidur mitzvah ad shlish mitzvah. Ulechorein move on. What does it mean ad shlish? It's 64 times. Rabbeinu Chananel's words don't make any sense. Ulamira, the kavanasa l'mashe kasav, du lashon ha-mahadrin mashma dein chiyuv lahadir. He's not talking about the chiyuv of hidur. Ve'im bazaf mitzvah l'chatchila, rak misha rotza lahadir. V'al zeh hu she'evi mehachtina dat shlish b'mitzvah. V'shuv matzasi, I'll explain what that means shortly. V'shuv matzasi b'Rabbeinu Chananel b'Bava Kama daf tes ad shlish mishalo Klomar muzaru lahasnos b'mitzvah ad shlish. Mikan ve'elech and mosif yesar shlish midi yisera osa. So Rabbeinu Hananel tells us that, and this, by the way, based on the words of Gemara that I decided we don't have enough time to discuss now, that when it comes to the chiyuv of shlish, that's a chiyuv. But if you want, you could expend even more. Then Rabbeinu Hananel adds, Davar acher, 5 lines from the end, Mikan ve'elech shimba lahadar mitzvah b'yeser shlish midanim eino chayiv kol zman kol zem miyigio. When, if you have the wherewithal, you spend up until a shlish. Avol zimelo mamon mishamayim. That's the lashon of Rabbeinu Hananel that the brisker Rav cut out. Ubikesh lahadar hamitzvah biyoser mishlish harishus biyado v'amahadar hamitzvah b'shubach kidit ninon b'ner Chanuka v'amahadrin l'kol echad ve'echad. I'll crunch for you what the brisker Rav just did. He says as follows. The second day of Rabbeinu Hananel says the chiyuv of Hiddur Mitzvah is up until a third, but we see from Ner Chanuka that the chiyuv goes above and beyond the third, and if a person has the wherewithal, so then he has a kiyum and it's spending more than a third. What has the brisker Rav done in this final line, in this final paragraph even? He's pointed out that what the Zayd of the Beis HaLevi said, he thinks is not correct. Because Rabbeinu Hananel says black and white that Hiddur Mitzvah and Ner Chanuka go together. So even though the Sfas Emes and the El Yerabah and the Magen Avram, all of those shitos said that Hiddur Mitzvah and Ner Chanuka is different, concludes the brisker Rav, I'm even going to argue with my grandfather. He's not going to say he's arguing with his grandfather. You got to read between the lines. But I'm going to even argue with my grandfather because this is the Yesod in this Mefurish in Rabbeinu Hananel. I'm not so happy about this because I love the Sfas Emes. I'm not so happy about this because if that's so then Rabbi Akiva Eiger is right. It's all connected to the regular rules of Hiddur Mitzvah. If it's connected to the regular rules of Hiddur Mitzvah, then you don't make a separate bracha in Hiddur Mitzvah. Then the Sfas Emes is wrong.
So you just spend a lot of money on that, if you can.
So what's the pshat? So Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim Chaim. The brisker Rav's Yisoid is the emes in Rabbeinu Hananel. And I worked hard today, I sweated on the Rabbeinu Hananel. I wanted to be Miyashe Rabbeinu Hananel. Brisker Rav's right. I don't have any other Atman in the Rabbeinu Hananel. Even though the brisker Rav does pull a fast one, that he doesn't quote every word of Rabbeinu Hananel. Look it up. It's actually Gishmak. Even in Tzvi, you could use this in a drasha one day because it's a beautiful. The Gemara there says that up until a shlish you're supposed to give, and then more than a shlish is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Rabbeinu Hananel elaborates on this part from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Dvarim Amukim. But in terms of lamdus, zeh hapshat. So then, what are we going to do? Us Ashkenazim, that everybody makes a bracha. So then I remembered that Reb Branchspiegel, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu give him a refuah shalema, told me, it's now 25 years ago. Told me 25 years ago, probably the first time that I heard this piece. And I told him I would say a chabura on this sugya. So, Ein Adam Yored L'Saif Das Rabbi Ad Achar Arboim Shana. It's now 25 years ago. Today, as I was being amal on the sugya, I never forgot what my Rebbe said. Never forgot. A sentence I didn't forget, but only now do I understand what my Rebbe was driving at. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi on that Gemara on Chaf Aleph on the Beis in entry number 2. Rashi says on the word v'mahadrin, v'hamahadrin achar hamitzvos. Those who are mahader after mitzvahs. You remember we pointed out, so let me first say the one sentence that my Rebbe said. One sentence my Rebbe said is I said, Rebbe, I'm going to discuss with the Talmidim in the Shiur. I'm going to discuss with them the brisker Rav. And he said, take a look at Rashi's Lashon Mahadrin Achar HaMitzvos. Ad kan dvar v'akdoshim. That's what my Rebbe said. Take a look at Rashi's Lashon Mahadrin Achar Mitzvahs. What are the Dvar Mamukim of what Rashi said? The Dvar Mamukim of what Rashi is saying is that this Hidur is different than the Hidur Mitzvah that we have on the next entry in the Gemara Shabbos Kufam Gimel Mebeis that we made reference to. The Brisker Rav explains Zeh Keli V'Avei with Sana L'Fana B'Mitzvahs. The Gemara has a list of a bunch of things that are all in. Notice the lashon in the Cheftza Shel Mitzvah. They're all in the object. Zot De'ele Gerashi. The word Mahadrin over here doesn't mean that. The word Mahadrin means Lahader Achar Mitzvahs. I'm not sure, but maybe what Rashi is referring to is that it's actually the Aramaic to go after mitzvahs. Those who go after mitzvahs. In Kedim Advarim, then the Chiyuv on Mahadrin is not a din in the Cheftza Shel Mitzvah, as the way the Brisker Rav, in the nuanced reading of the Brisker Rav, not the way they just say over, oh, Mila and Eretz Chanuka go together, and L'shitaso, boom, that's how they say over in the Yeshiva Ktanis, that's how they say it over. Yeshiva Ktanis, they should be teaching them how to read Gemara Rashi Taisis. The boys are not ready, they're not ready to understand what Lumdus is, and then by the time they're 18 years old, then they think they know they're already done with Shiur. They're already finished. In my generation, we went to Shiur for 10 years. So Shiur for 20, and the generation before, they learned Rosh Shiur for 20 years. It was already you read the Sadoros, so you learn and you weren't ready for Shiur until you were 18, 19 years old. You weren't even ready. In Keinim Advarim, it goes as follows. Rashi over here is saying Hamahader Achar Mitzvos. What's Rashi saying? Hamahader Achar Mitzvos. Rashi is bringing out that this is a different Hidur. It's an entirely different Hidur. That's what Rashi is bringing out. This is the Hidur of a Mahader Achar Mitzvos. It's a din in the Maisa Mitzvah, not a din in the Cheftza Shel Mitzvah. In Keinim Advarim, the Brisker Rav is right. B'das Rabbeinu Chananel, but there are many who will possibly disagree. If that's so, then there's room to go so far as to say that there was a separate takana of a Mahadrin Achara Mitzvahs, a separate takana Mahadrin Achara Mitzvahs. That separate takana is a takana in the Maisa Mitzvah, and therefore the two parts that the Brisker Rav is Mechadesh as the way in which Hidur Mitzvah works, each one is dependent on the other. And according to our approach, each one is cholek on the next. Let me explain what I mean. Rashi's cholek on Rabbeinu Chananel, because Rashi learns Mahadrin Achar Mitzvos. Then the next line you go back and you say, therefore, Neros Chanukah is a unique halach of Hidur Mitzvah, like the Zayd of the Beis Halevi explained. And he himself was alluding to that, the fact that he's disagreeing with the Zayd of the Beis Halevi. And then you go back the last step, where the Brisker Rav says, of course it's a davar pashut. Then it comes to Neros Chanukah, the chiyuv is how? The chiyuv is not al kol echad ve'echad, but is only a halacha in the Cheftza Shel Neros. No! Once you say what the Beis Halevi said, then it's a halacha in the Maisa Mitzvah. And it all goes with Shitas Rashi that's cholik on Rabbeinu Chananel. One more knitch, and then we're ready for Malav Malka. One more knitch.
Good.
Oh, by the way, I found friends along the way. The friends that I found was Rav Shach says this beferish, quote unquote, against the Brisker Rav. Rav Shach in the Avi Ezri just cholek. He doesn't make the point with Rashi. He just says that he thinks that the Brisker Rav that he disagrees. Yes.
What would happen if you find a better oil?
What
if you find better oil? Would you lie again and say better another?
Yesh l'falpel. In other words, once you have the chidush of the Elyo Rabbah, how far does it go? Presumably, we wouldn't go so far. Presumably, we wouldn't go so far in such a case. We wouldn't go so far as to say that you need to make a new bracha. But yesh l'falpel. According to that shita, there's a lot of room to argue such a thing.
The Avi Ezri that was quoted, that all you say is saying over there is that there's a new
the hitter is a new chefza. So if you get more oil, there's no, you're not going to make a bracha. There's no, the hitter of Ner Chanukah is having a new chefza of Ner Chanukah.
And therefore,
yeah, for sure. You're not
okay. You still follow. I hear room to be followed.
Just with the idea of Mahajim, like those words in general a little bit aren't as commonly found in other places.
Yeah,
Exactly.
go ahead.
But no, but so it's I think it aligns nicely though the idea of keeping it with the Ma'aseh mitzvah and the Chatzah and the Gaber more so. So the mitzvah is nourishment, so it's on the person itself. So the Mahajim that. So it's one person or then it's multiple people. And then so Mahajim. So based on the Mahajim we have, it's the concept of multiple people. So how do multiple people light? It's not
Mahadran being the day. Mahadran is the day. Mahadran is the day.
Mahadran is the people.
I'm sorry. Mahadran is the people. You're right.
Right,
Mahadran is now called.
Right. So Mahadran is right.
Yeah.
So it's about multiple people lighting.
Right.
So then how do multiple people light?
Right.
If you look at it the other way, as far as just counting Nera, so it's like okay, so one Nera, one person lights one Nera,
100%.
or and then if you go in the logic of then or you're multiple Neros in the house. But if you're thinking no, it's based on the Mahadran is initially based on the original mitzvah, which is a person lights a candle. So adding to that is multiple people light, and then adding to that is how do multiple people light,
Absolutely.
Not how many Neros you have.
Absolutely. We're
And
about
then, and then it goes along with the.
So let me take what you're saying, Shmuel, and develop with the third shita and one more inspiration. There is a third shita that we didn't discuss at all, and that is the shita of the Balei Tosos. The Balei Tosos fall trap to Shmuel's argument. I'll explain what I mean. The Balei Tosos are of the opinion that Mahadran is ner l'kol echad ve'echad. Each one lights a candle. But when it comes to Mahadran min Mahadran, you forget about the ner l'kol echad ve'echad, and you correspond to the nights. The shita of the Balei Tosos is that the Mahadran min Mahadran doesn't build off of the Mahadran. That's the shita of the Balei Tosos. What is the Balei Tosos argument? The Balei Tosos say the Rambam's got to be wrong. Why does the Rambam have to be wrong? Because at the end of the day, if you have, in the Rambam's case, 8 candles on the 8th night, 64, how do you know what night it is? You're not going to be able to, it's not going to be Nikar what night it is at all. It's not going to be Nikar. That's the shita of the Balei Tosos. Of course, the Ramah, as we mentioned, responds to the Balei Tosos, and he says now we light in different places, so therefore the halacha is going to be different. Tosos seems to be focusing on what everybody sees around them. This connects to your other question. What do people see when it comes to the Neros Chanukah? Tosos is not focusing on the Bnei Habayis as their chiyuv. Tosos is focusing on the perception, if you will, maybe even connected to the Persume Nisa of Chanukah. And Tosos says not everybody recognizes. Comes along Rav Zolti Zatzal, and he has a fascinating Maramakom. I was zocha to learn this with Rav Yoel. We did the sugi of Sirtut and Gittin. There's a Taisis and Menachos on the Avlamed Beis on the Beis. Tosos and Menachos Lamed Beis on the Beis says that when it comes to the halacha of Sirtut of course means the lines that are put on under the Kisvei Kodesh. It's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So says Tosos, there's Tzvei Dinim and Sirtut. There's Sirtut that's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and then there's another halacha of Sirtut, which is Zeh Keli Van Veyu, that the words are supposed to be Mesudar. Zok Rabbeinu Tam Menachos Lamed Beis Amud Beis, that if you have Sirtut on a chiyuv, that's Zeh Keli Van Veyu, then that only applies to those things that you see, that people see. But when it comes to tefillin, that you don't see that's covered, there isn't a chiyuv of Sirtut. And with that, the Rabbeinu Tam answers a stira between the Gemara Gittin and the Gemara Menachos over there. Says Rav Zolti, what do we see from here? We see from here that the halacha of Zeh Keli Van Veyu Hider mitzvah, which is the source, and Tosfos is quoting Zekei Livan Veyu. What do we see? We see that it's connected to what people see.
This is separate.
And therefore, the Balei Tosfos, he says, are coming from Zekei Livan Veyu. V'amevin Yavin, the Ramah, who's very different than Balei Tosfos, who we were masbir, is not coming from either the approach of Tosfos or the approach of Rabbeinu Hananel. He's a different world. But the Balei Tosfos are also the ones who hold Zekei Livan Veyu is a halacha in Hidur Mitzvah by Chanuka, and therefore perception is going to be critical as well. That's going to be the shita of the Balei Tosfos.
Rashi meaning.
And we're suggesting, based on Dvar of Kedoshim, that of one sentence of my Rebbe that I only understood 25 years later, that Rashi is being cholik on this. When Rashi says Mahadrin Achara Mitzvahs, then maybe that's the pshat. Rabbi Yitzchak, the quote from Rabbi Branchfield, a sentence that he told me that I only understood 25 years later.
He might not be correct on the understanding of Hidur Mitzvah being a perception thing, because he doesn't understand. If I understand what you're saying correctly, this isn't Hidur Mitzvah. This is Mahadev and.
Oh, you could have, right. Rav Zolti's making an assumption. Nachon. Nachon, Rav Zolti's making an assumption that Tosfos is working of Zekei Livan Veyu.
And
Nachon.
Rashi means, which is not in that sugya.
Right.
Correct,
We were saying there's
correct,
a
correct. This is Rav Zolti's Torah. Rav Zolti, this is a beautiful, beautiful sefer. It's not famous enough. In fact, my son learns in his son-in-law's yeshiva, Rav Eichenstein. And even in his own yeshiva, the boys, it's a beautiful yeshiva, the boys don't even know the sefer. It's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful sefer, Mishnas Yagutz. He was one of the big rabbanim in Yerushalayim, Rav Zolti. So Rav Zolti suggests this pshat. I'd like to conclude with another practical extension of this lomdus to the machshava of Chanukah. The idea that Hidur is connected to perception, which is a tesis. It's a tesis menachas lamed beis amez. But not only is it a tesis menachas lamed beis amez, it's a bnei Yisachar also. In this week's parsha, everybody know. I hope you know by now that my passion is that lomdus and avodas Hashem and chasidus, they're all part of one thing, and so hakol miroya echad. Zok de'elu de bnei Yisachar. The gematria of Yosef is Antiochus. Ad kan Dvar of Kedoshim. Typical Bnei Yisachar, you got it. It's not even so clear what the Bnei Yisachar is driving at. So I have to be careful what I say at home. My wife is a descendant of the Bnei Yisachar when I read these Bnei Yisachars. But usually what happens is after time they begin to if you say Einod Yod Sof Das Rabbo or Rebbe, now Kal Chomer, giants of Torah, that after time you realize that there's so much there. Yosef HaTzadik, Rav Soloveitchik described, was in a deep tension with his brothers. There was a machlokes that was l'shem shemayim between Yosef and Echav. Yosef begins to be mesalsel saros. Yosef doesn't go with his brothers who shepherd. The Messiah of Yaakov, Yitzchak, and Avraham Avinu were all that they were shepherds. It was shepherds. Now, it's not just that they happened to be shepherds, that was an avoda nekiya. It's much more than that. How did Avraham Avinu find HaKadosh Baruch Hu? He didn't find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a cosmopolitan setting. Avraham Avinu sat in nature, a young child, and after years and years and years, he finds Kudsha Brichu. So Avram Avinu begins this Masorah of being a shepherd that is continued through Yitzchak, through Yaakov, and through the brothers. Comes along the youngest brother, and he starts a different mahalach. His brothers don't understand it. Yosef introduces the Bechina of Antiochus, the Bechinas Tzadik. Yosef creates the Bechina of Yosef HaTzadik. What's the struggle with Yavan? The struggle with Yavan in its core, Will Durant describes, he was a historian, describes that in Greece there was an emphasis of beauty and art and entirely precluded anything that couldn't be felt or touched or studied. The whole musag of neshama, the whole notion of the soul, was something that was entirely rejected. I don't have time now, but if one's ma'ayin, the three gzeros that were placed on Klal Yisrael, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, and Milah, all reflect that particular tension. Come along the Chashmonaim, and the Chashmonaim are Moser Nafsham. We saw from the Beis Halevi, they're Moser Nafsham ala Hidur. Chanuka is all about Yafyefusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem. It's the Bechina of Yosef, Bechina Yosef HaTzadik, the Bechina of the Chitzon, B'tziruf HaPnimius. And as Rav Adam mentioned before, Rav Neven Sal Shlita points out that the Chashmonaim wanted to go out of their way to say that we have the ability to be mitzaref these two, but we notice that in the Migdash what has happened is the gold has gone too far. So we are going to create a Hidur where the Tzidkus is once again going to be mitzuref with the Bechina of Yosef. And therefore, according to the Balei Tosas, the lighting of Chanukah is a connection of Zekei Vanveyu. Like, similar to the Brisker Rav, not like the way the Beis Halevi had said in that other piece. Because ultimately the Balei Tosas say that there was a struggle over the definition of Zekei Vanveyu. And therefore Neiros Chanukah is all about, yes, it's about Hidur, and the perception of others. Perception of others is important. But being done, Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem. What's this Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem, this Bechina Ba'olei Shem? Haneirois Halalu Kodesh Shem. There's a halacha that the Moiser Shemen Shebener, one has to burn. One has to burn the Moiser Shemen Shebener, left over from Neiros Chanukah. L'chura it's a din d'Rabbanan. The halacha in Hilchos Taruvas, David, is as follows: if you have an Iser d'Rabbanan that has been already mixed with other shemen, then we say you're allowed to be Mosif Aleim U'Mevatlan. Even though there's a rule of Ein Mevatlan Isser L'Chatchila, however, when it comes to Isurei d'Rabbanan, you're allowed to be Mevatlan. That's what's gepaskind in Simin Kuf Alf. Right, Kuf Alf. That's it. However, in Hilchos Chanukah, the halacha is like this. And the Shach asks it as a stira. In Hilchos Taruas, the Shach asks it as a stira. In Hilchos Chanukah, the halacha is that even if the shemen is mixed up with other shemen, you're not allowed to be Mosef Lo Mevatlan. And the Shach leaves off with a kasha. We have a tradition of a beautiful teretz from Rav Soloveitchik. Rav Soloveitchik, this is it's a big ksav now in Rabbi Genak's Sfarim. Rabbi Genak suggests the following teretz from the Rav. The Hadlakas Neiros Chanukah, maybe we could add bibayis in a Jewish home, is a bechina midrabanan of recreating that Hadlaka b'Mikdash. And therefore the Persume Nisa that you made reference before, which is a chiyuv, which is the perception, which is Zekei Vanveyu, which is 64 times, according to the Rambam, the core chiyuv is all about returning this bechina of Yafyefusa Shel Yefes, but here the Yafyefusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem is Bebayis HaYehudi Ad Bias Koyel. It's Bebayis HaYehudi. The Jewish home becomes that place of that Mikdash. So we have two lessons from this beautiful Lumbus. The first lesson that we had a half hour ago, 45 minutes ago. The first lesson is that the avoda of Chanukah is the avoda of Hidur, that if one doesn't compromise, that's when the miracles happen. And what are those uncompromising features? The first one is the one that the Bach made reference to, where the Bach described that the chiyuv, the core of the miracle came about because Klal Yisrael fixed Atzlus and Avodas Hashem. And that means our Cheshbon HaNefesh, going into Chanuka, is a Cheshbon HaNefesh about Zrizus. It's a Cheshbon HaNefesh. Zrizus doesn't only mean running to davening and getting to davening earlier. It's a Cheshbon HaNefesh about our ability in Zrizus, that everything, Bein Adon L'Makom, Bein Adon L'Chavero, that we could do in a manner that's uncompromising. Because in the way this holy woman on the Upper West Side said, if we compromise, then the miracles don't happen. Pshuto K'mashmo, that's lesson number 1 from the first part of the Lumbus. The second part that we saw from the Shitas Balitosis is the idea of Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem. Not to say that there's a separate halacha of Ner Chanukah Mahadrim and HaMahadrim, which is a different world. No, Rabbeinu Chanan Balitosis hold that Mahadrin is a chelik of Zakei Livan Veyu. And that means that when it comes to Chanukah, there's a unique avoda in regards to the Hidur Mitzvah. The unique avoda of Zakei Livan Veyu. But when it comes to Chanukah, that's unique. It's unique because it's the expression of Hidur Mitzvah in the context of Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem. Now what does that mean? Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem. So my daughter, who Baruch Hashem is artistic, so I can tell her that Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem means to use her artistic talents towards Avodah and Kudsha Brichu. Someone who's wealthy, we could say Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem is to take the money, their resources, to use it Ba'olei Shem. But that's not only Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem. Yafifusa Shel Yefes also refers, and I'm sure Rav Amos Shlita would agree with me, that Yafifusa doesn't only refer, Yofi here doesn't only refer to something that is entirely physical. But the Yofi, even of Yavan, is a Yofi that is much more ethereal, is much deeper than simply something that is external beauty. Yofi refers to all of the beautiful components of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world and the beautiful components of every human personality. Every component of the human personality. Yafifusa Shel Yefes Ba'olei Shem is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's call for us to be able to be mitztarev, to join every single component of our being in serving Kudsha Brichu. And if any challenge of our generation exists, one of the biggest ones is this ability to be able to funnel all koach to Kudsha Brichu. Kol atzmoisoi tamarna. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you a chen. You use that chen in your job. You use that chen to accomplish things. Have you really taken that Yafifusa Shel Yefes and really put it Ba'olei Shem? Is it a bechina of kol atzmoisei tamarna? Has a person taken all of his ramach evarim and shesagidim and use it towards avodah v'kudsha brichu? There's no manual for that. It's definitely something that I'm sure Rabbeinu would want us to emphasize. There's no way in which we could tell a person by opening up a Shulchan Aruch, this is the way you do it. What's obvious is that Chanukah is a time for a person to make a cheshbon hanefesh. Make a cheshbon hanefesh if the ramach evarim and shesagidim are all being used ba'olei Shem. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us the siyata d'shmaya that our homes should be a migdash this Chanukah. The koach of that bechina of migdash should be one that we should mamshich, and Be'ezer Hashem we mamshich l'doros, and with that we'll be zocha in kol hakivunim, the kol hakavonos shel mahadrim min hamahadrim.